This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at NumberFire.com, and this is episode 306 of the Late Round Podcast, one of the many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. We all know that Thursday night football games can be tricky, but FanDuel has the perfect treat for you this Halloween. FanDuel's $1 million NFL Thursday Million Nightmare is here with $1 million in prizes up for grabs in Week 9. Build your lineup of 49ers and Cardinals, turn on the game, and take your shot at the $200,000 first place prize, all for just $9. It's that easy. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. So trend 1 of today's 10 Trends show is sort of tied to what I talked about on yesterday's 15 Transaction show, but it's that Zach Ertz has finished ranked tight end 16 or worse in each of his last 3 games. Meanwhile, he finished tight end 16 or worse just 3 times last year when excluding the fantasy irrelevant Week 17. Now, I've said my piece on Dallas Goedert enough on this show over the last month, but there's no doubt that his performance is hurting Zach Ertz. But Ertz, in his defense, he's still seen a strong target share throughout the season. He should honestly be doing a little bit better than he is right now, but I still wouldn't go out trying to buy him only because Dallas Goedert has become a thing. Mark Walton handled about 79% of Miami's running back rushes, and he saw a near 19% target share on Monday night against Pittsburgh. That's the good news. That's actually great news. Walton should be rostered everywhere only because those market share numbers are great, even though the situation sucks. And the situation does suck. As a team, Miami ranks 30th in running back fantasy points scored, ahead of only the Jets and the Bengals. Let's not pretend this is a desirable situation. But Walton could end up being a weekly flex play given this usage without Kenyon Drake. Speaking of Kenyon Drake, his new team has Larry Fitzgerald. And Larry Fitzgerald has seen just 14% and 12% of Arizona's targets over the last 2 weeks, respectively. Things haven't been great for Fitz. He's sort of hit a wall, at least over the last 2 weeks, where he's combined for 3 receptions. It's hard to just plug and play him moving forward until we see more production, especially with Arizona facing San Francisco twice over the next 3 weeks. New England has run just 4.1% of their offensive plays this year while trailing. The team who's in second place, or the team with the second lowest rate, is unsurprisingly San Francisco. They're undefeated, so they're leading in a lot of games. But they've run 21.8% of their plays while trailing. In other words, New England's just constantly been in neutral or positive game scripts this year. This is a big reason James White was a buy candidate for me this week. It's highly unlikely New England's going to maintain this type of rate of plays run while trailing, especially with their upcoming schedule. So if they're trailing, we could easily see more of their pass catching back, James White. And it's not like he's been some awful fantasy option to begin with. Demaryius Thomas has seen at least 16% of the Jets' targets in each of his last 4 games that he's played, including 2 games with a target share at or above 29%. But it really hasn't mattered that much. He's ranked as the wide receiver 40, 32, 57, and 36 with an average of 53.5 yards per game. Maybe he'll be able to produce with the Jets' easy upcoming schedule, but Jamison Crowder and Robbie Anderson are playing as the top receivers on this team snap-wise. So I wouldn't be banking on Demaryius Thomas being super fantasy relevant. Carson Wentz threw it 15 or more air yards on just 2.7% of his throws on Sunday. Josh Allen, in that same game, threw it deep on 15% of his, which is about 6% lower than his season average. Now, I wanted to bring this up on today's show because it does help us understand how wind can impact fantasy performance. A high average depth of target is a very good thing, but if there are high winds, we know that teams won't throw the ball down the field as much. So it's just something to keep in mind. The Rams still rank lowest in the league in running back target share at 10.6%. Todd Gurley has seen less than 8% of LA's targets this year, and he's had back-to-back weeks of a sub 4% target share. It's really gotten to the point where it's hard to be excited about him and the offense moving forward, at least from a fantasy perspective, and that does not include Cooper Kupp, who is absolutely balling out this year. Trend 8 is one that I talked about a little bit yesterday, but I wanted to expand on it. But it's that Mike Williams hasn't scored a touchdown on his 50 targets this year, but he had 10 touchdowns last year on 66 targets. Now, I sent this as a tweet out on Monday, and I got responses from people that had to do with regression, saying that this was regression. This isn't really regression, though, and I think that this is a good time to explain that. Mike Williams overperformed in the touchdown column last year, a lot. But when a player regresses, he doesn't regress past his average. He regresses to the mean. Mike Williams' mean is not 0 touchdowns on 50 targets. He should have, like I said yesterday, about 2.5 touchdowns this year based on his yardage totals. So remember that regression isn't a correction. A player overperforming doesn't mean that that player then underperforms. He just performs. The last time Derrick Henry saw more than 3 targets in a single regular season game came back in October of 2016. This is just to say that he's still not being targeted a whole lot. He's had just a 6% target share on the season, and he's hit a double-digit target share in just one of those contests. The final trend is that in a negative game script on Sunday, or a fairly negative game script, we saw Devin Singletary get 20% of Buffalo's targets. More importantly, he played 68% of Buffalo's offensive snaps, which was his highest snap rate since week 1. He's trending up, and he could be someone who really makes a difference down the stretch. That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you have to subscribe to the Late Round Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at LateRoundQB. If you could do me a favor, hit up Apple Podcasts and leave a review of this show. It'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. Thanks, everyone. I'll be back in your ears tomorrow with the weekly matchup show.